Yeah, may I have all the panelists up front, please? All right, this is, let's see, Dan, please. This is my CD. Thank you. Yeah, this is the last session of the day. I'm super excited. It's a very special guest. So this is a EV focused session, and we have 5 panelists representing 5 awardees from the CEC's Redwood project. If you have not heard about it, I'll give a brief overview for that. But my name is Jingjing Liu, technology researcher, and I manage CalFlexHub. So I'm going to be moderating this session today. And let me introduce our 5 panelists. So starting with Sam Golda. So Sam is the Policy and Government Affairs Manager for Calusa. And next we have Daniel Hilson. He's the CEO of Better Fleet. And we have actually his colleague Holly is also in the audience who may join us for Q&A. And we have Nate Underwood, Senior Business Development Manager of EV.Energy. And Francis Bell, co-founder of Bidirectional Energy. And last but not least, Casey Donahue, CEO of OptiWatt. All right, so next slide, please. This is a very quick overview of the Redwood project. So this is a solicitation that the CEC Clean Transportation Program put out last year. And so, the background for this is certainly, California is really pushing on phasing out the gasoline vehicles in a very big way, presenting both huge opportunities as well as challenges. And the challenges being, number one, how to accommodate the EV charging load on the grid with all these constraints that we know about. And then secondly, how do we help the customers to really navigate this complex landscape about all these programs, rates, and different offerings to monetize the if the EV drivers are willing to charge their vehicle in a grid-friendly way, how do they get valued for that and get compensated? So I think that's a really important background for this project. And next slide, please. So as you see, this is a very significant investment of the CEC with the dollar amount, 2 phases. Phase 1 is meant to be a product development and a relatively smaller scale demonstration. And if successful, much more money available for that phase 2 really large scale deployment. And one of the key requirements is that the product needs to be able to automatically receive all kinds of grid signals and being able to help customer to respond to that with the charging. And you can do that through telematics or the charger. And in addition to that product development, fuel deployment is a really, really essential component required of all these projects. And multiple projects, you will hear that there's the bidirectional charging elements in that as well. So the CEC awarded a total of 10 projects, and we are so fortunate to have 5 of the winning project teams here represented. So next slide, please. And these products, so in addition to being able to respond to the grid signals, there also is a strong requirement that the products is really easy to use. So that user friendliness is something that all of our speakers will highlight in their presentations. Certainly have to create value for them. So with that, we're going to jump into Calusa's presentation. Please go ahead, Sam.
Of course. Thank you very much, Jingjing. Hello, everyone. Sam Goda. First, I wanted to say thank you to organizers for putting this event together. There's a lot of work behind it. And so, yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Calusa. Then I'll tell you how we optimize things. I'll tell you about Redwood's project and then a little bit more about CalCharge, which is Redwood's project in reality. So Kaluza is a global software B Corp certified company. We're headquartered in London, but we are present in different markets, including Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and EU as well. And we were born out of OVO. OVO Energy is one of the top retailers in UK. Initially, we were established as an internal think tank to actually solve the question of what it actually means to be an energy company, right? Why? Because we recognize the trend that the energy system is moving to a model where the customer is at the very heart, at the center of this, storing, producing, and managing its own energy. And we recognize that energy companies, legacy energy companies, are just not ready for this. And so the question was, what Kaluza can do to help them to navigate this complexity of basically new future. So this is what we do. And yeah, next slide, please. We optimize. So what you see on the right side is the backend optimization. And what you see on the left side is the customer's proposition. So what the customer sees. On the right side, yeah, we optimize for ready by time and state of charge is what our customers, like EV users, we focus on EVs, will tell us and what do they need. We use both device telemetry and we can speak to EVSE, to the charger as well. So we're actually using both ways, both pathways. Yeah, we can optimize against curves, coming from DSOs, coming from utility, whatever you need. We can also optimize against residential solar, which is something that's very interesting, especially in Australian market. And we believe that something similar could be done in California as well because of climate similarities. What you see on the left side is actually the proposition for the customer. And out of all of these, I'd like to highlight the type of use rate. The type of use rate appears to a customer as a flat rate, so that incentivizes so-called set and forget experience. So basically, we are able to measure the energy consumed by the EV separate from the household. So this rate is only for an EV. It doesn't matter where when the customer plugs the car in, whether it's like during the middle of the day, even during the peak hours, because we will do the optimization on their behalf, of course. But for them, it's easy. They just need to plug in. That's it. And yeah, we use telemetry, like from the EV, as well as EVSE data to do the billing. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is Tree. This is our yeah, project for the Redwoods solicitation. We named it Tree. So what are we going to do? We're going to deploy 330 deployments, 300 of them V1G and 30 V2G. We decided to go for, well, I'll speak about that later maybe. 50% of those deployments are going to be low-income communities. We're really interested to get more learnings from that. And I believe this is something, yeah, we all do have in common. We're going to test dynamic tariffs and grid signal integration coming from utilities mostly. As you can see, like compared to other awardees, we didn't go that big, I think, on both 300 V1G or 30 V2G. Yeah, but I can talk through that a little bit later on why we made that decision. And yeah, next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Could you go back? I apologize. I forgot to mention our partners, Wellbox for the EVSE, PG&E on the utility side. There is an automaker which you can maybe clearly identify that we plan to work with, although it's TBD. And then we do have a Valley Ken as a community-based organization that's trying to help us to get into low-income and disadvantaged communities. So yeah, they're going to help us with recruitment and customer engagement as well. Now, next slide, please. And this is how our app looks like. So in reality, our real clients are utilities, right? And so we do white label the app for them. So you won't see Kaluza's brand anywhere. This time it's slightly different. So it's going to be our app. And what we try to incentivize, first of all, is the plug-in behavior. So that is our goal. We want the customers, we want like EV owners to plug the car in. That's what we really want to incentivize. So they will get 50 points for each day they plug in for 6 hours. And so based on my rough math, was about $200 per year as like almost ideal kind of savings they could get for participation in this program. And then, how we plan to recruit them. As I mentioned, we're working with Valley Ken. So that's going to be a very important partner to get folks from low-income disadvantaged communities or like disadvantaged communities to get into our program. We're going to be working also with PG&E and get customers from their hourly flex pricing program into our project or into our proposition. Of course, social media, and then community organizations. We still believe that there are many EV enthusiasts around, and basically we believe that the community organizations, the nonprofits, it's not only about like business in this case or hard money. That's why we want to kind of like build a broader alliance of people that would understand the benefits of V1G and V2X. And yeah, I think I'm over time, so I'd stop here. But yeah, happy to tell you more, and yeah, happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Dan, you're next.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Dan Hilson here. I'm founder of Better Fleet. We're actually an Australian company that expanded to the US, Europe over the last 8 years. We focus on the decarbonisation of transport and fundamentally focus on complex fleets. So we went from broad to pretty narrow over time. And we work with about 200 fleets around the world, transit logistics, school bus, and also a lot of municipalities. And essentially our platform is a unique end-to-end platform for planning, optimization, and management of complex fleets that are decarbonising, mainly electric, but we are pretty agnostic in some ways in the end-to-end process. And so we have a digital twin that we've developed, which is fairly unique in the sense that it doesn't just manage and orchestrate the vehicles, but it understands topography, climate, start, stop, regenerative braking. We have models of the vehicles, models of the chargers, and we create that ecosystem to be able to optimize the way that these things are planned and also managed. Do I change this or does someone else change? Great. So we're really excited by the Redwoods. I'm an energy market nerd. I've been in clean tech for about 20 years. So, I am passionate about the area, but when I started, the energy market was the last thing on fleets' minds. They didn't even know how to buy chargers or vehicles or put them online. It just wasn't on their radar. Getting the vehicles to dispatch, getting the chargers to work was their issue. So it took us a long time to get to the energy market integration because it just wasn't pivotal. But when this grant came along, we really sort of thought, and my co-founder as well was had done startups in the energy markets for many years as well. And so we said, look, here's a way to do it properly. Like if you're going to do this and really build an architecture to do demand response in a very comprehensive way, in a generalizable way against our digital twin, you have to have a very, very expansive program to work with. And the CEC program for Redwoods was exactly that. And it was very exciting to us. We looked at really an architecture was about approaching fleets at the planning stage using our digital twin and saying, look, here's all the mechanisms that might work. And if you lock them in when you're actually planning with them, then there's more opportunity for them to actually manage over time. If you go to someone who hasn't even installed the right equipment, you haven't done a plan with them, it's just too late because they don't have the installed infrastructure to do the demand management. So that was kind of the high level, do the planning, leave them with with an architecture, and then do the charge management on the back of that plan. So I'm going to go to the next slide. We did a lot of enrollment. We do engage with a lot of fleets, so we're quite lucky in having a lot of them. I mean, in the fleet world, we're not talking about thousands. We're really talking about use cases from each of those fleet types. So, we have LADOT, for example, on the transit side. We've got Oakland City. We have a whole bunch of counties, as you can see. We have utilities and utilities like Metropolitan Water District, MWP. So really across different use cases and working with them again, as I said, getting the telematics, understanding how their duty cycles work for their fleets, looking at the load curves that sort of reflect off those duty cycles, modeling that for them, and then doing demand response. If you go to the next slide. So really it was about, decision support in the planning phase, establishing a baseline of what's possible. And really for us commercially, it's about really just nobody knows which of these are going to have enough value. So we're about how do we find enough value to create a product. This is not a product phase, this is an R&D phase. And can we find a value stack to go to clients in the future with the CEC second round funding and say, look, with this amount of money, we can capitalize into some infrastructure. There'll be enough savings for you to participate. We've shown you in the plan that you can participate. Sign up to this program. So that's the sort of order that we think it will work for fleets because they're so sensitive to the actual duties they have to do, picking up passengers or delivering goods or whatever it is. So that's what we're trying to prove. We're showing them the build programs, and then we're essentially trying to financialize that. So if you go to the next slide. So our kind of architecture is trying all of these things. I mean, we want to try all of the different energy market optimizations we can. And we're working across multiple regions. So SMUD was a partner, as was Kaizo, as was EPRI. So EPRI is doing all the research for us, or as partnership. But we're all of those fleets are across multiple. So SEE, PG&E, etc. So we're working in all those different areas on the dynamic pilots, on the LRP and other mechanisms. And really our job in all of that is to create, using our digital twin, a day ahead load profile that we can then, schedule into these markets and emulate what's going to happen the next day. So our digital twin also helps us to emulate the forward curves we need to trade in the market. So happy to answer questions. That's sort of a high level of what we're trying to do. And thanks very much for inviting us here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your time.
Thanks everyone for joining this panel. I'm Nate Underwood from EV.Energy. We are a software and turnkey program management provider to electric utilities and also to drivers. We work with around over 185,000 drivers globally, over 55 utilities, including over 35 in the US, and right now over 5 California CCAs.
Nate, you might want to get closer to the microphone. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And additionally, we don't just have scale, but we deliver it with high quality, and our year-to-date customer satisfaction for those US utility programs is over 96%. Next slide, please. So under the Redwoods grant that we're all here for, our scope, what we're calling Project ChargeWise California, driver recruitment is underway for phase 1. We currently work with 5 of the CCAs, and we're working to enroll another 300,000 drivers in California on managed charging, including half in low-income and disadvantaged communities. The scope, it is starting with V1G with hourly price signals. There is room for V2G expansion. And we typically in utility programs, the same holds true here, provide around 95% coverage via both networked chargers and telematics. Some new features that we're adding, again, as with many of us, hourly price signals. And again, as with many of us, wrapping this into a dynamic rewards incentive scheme that can sit on top of the customer's existing tariff. Next slide, please. So a bit of detail on how we're recruiting and doing communications. This is similar to what we do for other turnkey utility managed charging programs. This includes email, digital, surveys, and we're engaging customers in ways that are similar to the way we engage in other programs today. So customer charging insights tab on the app, monthly charging insights emails, and off-bill payments. But again, customized for the hourly pricing that drivers are receiving. Next slide, please. This is a bit of detail on how we are dispatching customers. We're taking wholesale market price data, day ahead, via Kaizo API. We're scheduling Similar to other managed charging providers, we've learned that it's really important to provide customer convenience first. So customers always have their vehicle charged by the ready by time. And then we always respect their applicable tariff, in this case, overridden by their dynamic rate. And then we apply secondary signals. So we have those hourly price signals come in. We can do hourly greenhouse gas intensity or event-based demand response, as we do for other California load serving entities. And then we schedule and dispatch and then pay the customers based on the difference between their current regular tariff and the dynamic rewards. Thanks for your time and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. All right, Francis.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here on a late afternoon. It's great to be up here with these other panelists. We're bidirectional energy. My background is in power systems engineering, and so I very much approach this problem from like being able to support the grid and make sure that our infrastructure can support all these really new and cool technologies in the future. So one unique part about our project is that we are only doing V2G bidirectional charging, and there's no one-way chargers. So one of the things that I have focused my little bit of time on is making customers aware of bidirectional charging, customer acquisition, and streamlining the charger installation process, because as my colleagues up here have already talked about, we have, utilities and markets that we interface with, but even just getting the assets installed and in place to have these markets ready are also important. So at Bidirectional Energy, we have a two-sided value proposition for the EV driver. We have a mobile app where the customer can manage their EV charging. And then we also work with them to identify a charger that's compatible with their vehicle, an electrician that is trained on installing that charger, so that they can have that full end-to-end experience. Next slide, please. And then on the other side, our value prop is for utilities. And as previous presenters talked about, there are different markets and programs that we are selling the power back into. And one of the reasons that we decided to focus solely on bidirectional charging is we see that the impact is significantly higher than a one-way charger. And we want to be able to demonstrate this through a grant opportunity like this. Next slide, please. So this is putting it all together where we have the bidirectional chargers on one side and all the different markets on the other side. And we are in the middle interfacing with these chargers here. And so there's a California ISO for Redwoods, and then the three main IOUs. I mentioned SMUD, and then another CCA, but we are working with far more than just these in California for Redwoods, and we're excited to roll out these different programs. Next slide, please. So this is the focus on the customer acquisition side of things. What we have, so we have a example customer. We have, her name is Alice, and there are three main value propositions that customers have for wanting bidirectional charging, and that is home backup during blackouts for resiliency. They're able to earn more money. They can either charge from solar, shift their utility bill usage, or earn secondary revenue stream through selling power back to the grid in these different markets. So these are the three key reasons that our customers reach out to us for bidirectional charging. So once they express interest, we match them with a bidirectional charger and a trained electrician. For this pilot, we have partnered with Coil and Wallbox. And in other projects, we've been awarded another CEC grant and are working with Emporia and Treehouse as well. So we have a lot of growing number of chargers. And then what the electrician will do is work with Alice to both get permitting with the city and utility interconnection. So this is another difference between bidirectional charging and one-way charging is utilities will go through a much more rigorous process. And this is a hurdle for customers and adoption. So we want to streamline this as much as possible. This model you may recognize if you've ever gotten solar on your house, someone like Sunrun would do this for your solar system as well. And then once your charger is installed, then Alice would log on to our app, and she would set her preferences for when she needs her car ready by and different home optimizations for energy use in her house for load shifting and what have you. Next slide, please. And I'll make this my last slide. So this is the app that I mentioned where a customer can manage their charging and optimization. And what we really believe it will make a valuable VPP is having that customer delight. So if a customer is engaged, they understand what's happening and they feel like they have the freedom to make the choices they want, we will have a healthy VPP. So we really focus on this. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Donahue. I'm the CEO and founder of OptiWatt. OptiWatt is a savings-focused whole home energy management platform. Now, initially, what we started as is an EV managed charging application, but I had the benefit of seeing all my colleagues' slides before I had to put together mine. So I wanted to focus on a couple different angles we bring to the space and really just show you guys some new ideas. So yes, we have an application that consumers can download. They can connect their EVs. They can connect their thermostats as well, and soon pretty much every device we can think of in their house we want to get connected. And then, of course, we work with utilities to help optimize that load. So you heard a lot of great algorithms and implementations of that from my colleagues up here, which is real-time rates, transformer load control. We do all those things, but really what I want to focus on today is the end customer, the end user. We heard from water heaters today. We heard from EVs today. We heard from V2G companies today. I think what we're all asking ourselves is the consumers need to manage this. How are they going to manage this? And as much as we want to wait around for OEMs to really build this into their application, we think we need to start making traction now. So if you go to the next slide, there's two main things I want to touch on with our Redwood grant. One is it's absolutely based on EV deployments, and a deployment for us is a EV connected to a real-time or dynamic rate that's being managed around. But what I want to focus on is LMI customers. So our goal is 50% LMI adoption of these EVs. And to date, we've deployed 11,000 of these EV deployments, meaning they're connected to our platform, connected or responding to real-time rates. 40% of that is in LMI areas. And the way we've been able to do that is really focus with the dollars around all of this. So we ignore a lot of things around the utility or managed charging or any of the underlying algorithms we use when talking to a customer and just show them exactly the dollars they're going to be earning, what they're saving, and why they should engage with any of this, whether it's real-time rates or electric vehicles. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is just a kind of a new customer experience that I wanted to focus on is what it looks like if a customer has an EV that we are connected to telematically, meaning we can see when the EV is charging, we can see their patterns, and what it looks like when there's a dynamic rate in their area that they could comply around. So we would show them on that first screen, hey, you have an EV, you could be saving $12 this week or $100 this week, whatever it is. We really personalize it down to that user. If we know the EV and we know we can control the EV, and we know the real-time rates and we know what there's going to look like, we can really preemptively optimize what we're going to do to that EV to save the user the most money. So we're going to show them, hey, you can save by switching to this dynamic or real-time rate. We're going to make it super simple for them to switch. They're just going to click one button. That's that second screen. And then really the third screen is a lot of what we're using these CEC dollars to help with, which is guarantee those savings. So whether that's working with utility partners or subsidizing this, we're basically making it all carrot, no stick. So what we want is we don't want to scare a user off in switching to a real-time rates. Worried, I don't know if you guys remember the gritty fiasco that happened in Texas, but that scarred a lot of people from participating in real-time rates. For you that don't know, people were paying about $6,000 for 2 days worth of energy when the Austin energy grid went down because they were on real-time plans. So we're basically guaranteeing it. We're saying, look, you're never going to be charged more. This is only in your benefit. You're going to be charged less. And again, the reason we can have that conviction there is because we know we're controlling the underlying asset that is going to be flexible with this grid. And finally, that last piece, when we talk about all these devices today, water heaters, thermostats, OEMs, batteries, users, in my opinion, our thesis here is going to want to see all those dollars in one place. They want to understand how much they're making on their EV, how much they're making with V2G, how much they're making or saving from the real-time rate. So we really are focused on the financial piece here of tying this whole picture together, at least from the financial angle for customers. Now, we understand that OEMs may do the underlying control, OEMs may do the recruitment either, but we think customers will want to see all the dollars in one place here. Next slide, please. I don't know what this is. Go a couple more. Oh, I see. Okay, it's just in a weird. You can just go through all of these and yeah, you can just start there and then I'll go. So I want to talk about how we're focusing on LMI, and this isn't this is very intentional. It's really hard to just find LMI customers, especially because EVs to date have been more of a luxury item or a higher income class item. So one thing we found extremely helpful is doing detection and modeling. So whether we're using meter data provided by our utility partners or actually pulling tons of data on home characteristics to identify, okay, who lives in an LMI territory that might have a home that would probably have an EV type. That's what it starts with, is trying to find these people. Then we do a ton to enroll and educate them. So when we think of deploying marketing dollars that Optiwa deploys out into a social media or digital channels, we disproportionately spend in LMI areas to reach these customers. We think, it's part of our obligation with the CEC grant, we have to reach them. But we also think from an equity perspective, it's really important to deploy extra dollars there because it's going to be the hardest customer base to reach in terms of EV adoption. Really, one of our biggest success stories here is instead of just saying, hey, connect your EV and you'll earn X dollars, is showing them all things they could be doing within their house. So whether there's other programs, whether there's other savings, we think if we can really nail all savings, that'll be a good gateway into the customer being comfortable with our application and then adopting it. And then finally, we're really trying to make it hassle-free. So I'll stop there, but really wanted to focus on the dollars and the LMI territories to try to get a new angle of adoption here in case some of the other channels aren't scaling enough. You can go to the next slide. I think that's it. Yep.
Thank you so much. Well, that's a really wonderful lightning round of giving us an overview of all this great work that you guys are starting to do. And so we're going to transition into a few moderated discussion questions, and kind of just picking on the last presentation from Casey. You touch on this requirement of, for all of you guys, projects to include about 50% disadvantaged communities in your project portfolio. And I'm sure that's not easy at all. I'm curious what you have seen. So in terms of the EV adoption in these communities compared to other communities, and what are some of the challenges you have already seen or you're anticipating, and what are some of the solutions that you have prepared in response to that anticipated challenge?
Yeah, I can start. So there's pros and cons. I would say the cons, we'll start with the hard, is that there's way less EV adoption in these service territories. It's just, like I said, it's going to be less EV adoption in these areas. The pros that we've seen that have actually made this easier, though, is if you think of, let's take a high-end like Model S, 65,000 EV. The savings that they'll earn in these programs or through switching to real-time rates are pretty low. It's like $100. Where that value prop really resonates the most, though, is in LMI communities. So another reason we're kind of leaning into the rewards is those dollars mean a lot more to those community members. So while it's harder to reach those customers, the value prop actually resonates a lot higher.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I wonder any of the other panelists want to add on that? Please.
Thank you. Actually, that is one of our most important learnings. We really want to know like how the LMI folks are behaving. But what we learned so far is that we need to, again, this is like our experience so far with Together Valley Can, is that we need to tell them everything at once. And we need to enroll them in a program in the same day they purchase the EV or get the EV. We call it point of sale enrollment. Why is that? It's because they're quite hard to reach, and do the follow-ups either through email, which is, yeah, that's not working. Phone calls, yeah, but they're expensive. And so actually, this is something, this point of sale mantra is something that we're following in Europe with no LMI folks. And surprisingly, it's something that it's supposed to work here in the US as well. So simply kind of like get them enrolled and explain them like everything, just briefly, simply, focus on savings, and yeah, but point of sale.
Does that mean you're collaborating with car dealerships are you relying on them to explain these, or are you have your staff there to?
Fantastic questions. So Valley Can works without the dealerships in this case. In other cases, yes, we do have other partners, it's private companies working with dealerships and trying to help them to educate EV, possible future EV owners, right? But in this case, it's Valley Can who is in touch with dealerships located in San Joaquin Valley. And they have their people, Valley Can people, go in to these these dealerships. Why? Because actually, I should mention this. The Valley Can has an interesting program where they are trying to combine all the federal and state incentives for low-income residents. So they would bring their old ICE car, usually let's think about like old Toyota Camry or Corolla or Honda Civic, and they would get out with a used, for example, Chevy Bolt or Tesla, okay? And so this is what the Valley Can is doing. And again, at the moment when these folks are purchasing these cars, just get them enrolled into a managed charging program. So that is the idea. That is the case.
Great. And Nate, you talked about in terms of using your algorithms to identify EV drivers. Are you also considering similar strategies in terms of partnering with car dealership when people are making a car purchase, they're already making a decision, or what are some other maybe interesting strategies that you guys use?
Yeah, so I think, can you hear me okay?
Of course.
I think probably all of my colleagues here would agree that point of sale enrollment kind of holy grail for customer enrollment, and that's true across all managed charging programs, not just Redwoods, not just in California. Getting back to the low income enrollment, I would agree that one place to start, which we're doing and others are doing, is paying more to acquire customers, because there are way fewer customers, and then also price sensitivity can be higher. And I think where we'd all like to get to through the learning from this grant is actually learning more about the information that we communicate, perhaps in the app, perhaps through Charging Insights emails, what resonates with communities that haven't owned EVs very much, and how can we motivate people, not just with more money, but meeting where they are with what they want to have. And yeah, we work with a lot of enrollment partners throughout the country. So car dealerships, a variety of other organizations.
Right. Francis?
I'll add one other thought from just the bidirectional specific side, where a lot of customers have found us when they're thinking about home electrification and not when they've purchased their car. So they're thinking about, getting an electric stove, and then they're like, oh, now I want my stove to work when the grid is down because it used to be on gas and I could cook then, And so there's this home electrification journey where people discover options for home backup, where V2G is becoming more of a conversation where um, I agree, it's absolutely point of sale is the best. And then we're also seeing an equally strong funnel through the home electrification.
Yeah, could you
industry.
also add a little bit context of your service and solution in terms of handling the electric panel piece when you approach customers?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that we partner with electricians to do the installs is to very specifically look at the electrical panel to make sure that um, the charger can be installed and if there are any upgrades that are required there. There are different, energy management solutions that can also be used either through smart panels or other things that can also be incorporated. But it is something, as homes get electrified, there's going to be demand for more capacity. And so it's just a matter of when the charger gets installed compared to other assets in the house.
Right. Yeah, one more question on the residential side before I go to Dan. And I'm just curious, kind of, Nate, you kind of alluded to this. I'm curious, does any of your app or approach involves motivating people to adopt EV before they even had an EV? Or is mostly about discovery and pulling in existing EV drivers?
I don't think to date we've done a ton to motivate the EV purchase. We've explored some partnerships. As noted, we work with a wide variety of enrollment partners. There's a lot of experimentation and learning with utility programs. But I think if the state of California is subsidizing EVs and EV chargers, but isn't subsidizing managed charging, it doesn't make much sense because we're just going to increase peak loads. So that's very much part of our vision, and we're looking forward to doing a lot more of it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd say we're, and this ties to the LMI focus, is actually partnering with someone on the leasing piece. So rather than trying to do a net new purchase, finding folks who are interested in leasing an EV and using that as kind of a channel into acquisition.
That makes a lot of sense. And Sam, I think you wanted to add something as well.
Yeah, so we indirectly, yes, but not within Redwoods. However, in UK, we have this proposition. I told you about that type of use tariff. So it was the tariff that was super interesting for the customers that were thinking about buying an EV. And so it's called Charge Anytime. And again, flat rate, super discount price. And that was something that resonated with the people. So I can charge my car really cheaply. And they did their own math compared to ICE cars. And they were like, okay, how do we know? Because around 20%, so we managed to get around almost 20,000 EV drivers into that proposition within 1 year. So that was a huge uptake. And around 20% of those were new EV owners. So that's how, like, maybe indirectly we're doing it, but yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of the EV adopters kind of have the level of sophistication to kind of do the math themselves to look at how much would I spend on fuel with my current car versus if I go for EV. But not everybody is necessarily equipped to do that kind of math themselves. So I'm just curious that might be an opportunity in terms of this kind of outreach and education to help increase EV adoption. But then let's go to Dan. So we have, I think for our projects that are a little bit concentrated in the residential sector, and yours is really about these fleet customers, and which is really different. So could you tell us a little bit more about what's unique about fleet customers, and when you approach them, what's some of the different sort of value proposition that really resonate with them? And
obviously with fleet customers and I mean, if we take Oakland, for example, LMI region, and essentially what they're struggling with is how to buy the vehicles, how to buy the chargers. And people like us are trying to create value stacks that say you can get the chargers for free, because ultimately there's a lot of government programs for funding vehicles chargers in the US at the moment. So FDA for transit, and there's a huge program even from the CEC that's just funded Oakland City for 100 chargers. And so the actual energy market interaction piece just becomes a part of that value stack. And as the TCO of the vehicles gets better, the energy market stuff is probably going to become a much more important part of the value stack. And so our kind of vision is to capitalize that saving and try to give it to them to buy the chargers, because if they don't get the chargers, they can't get the vehicles. All of these things bank up. So very different environment in terms of, we're talking megawatts in some of these sites. You know, they're very visible to utilities often, not always. Transit is, school buses are. When you get to logistics, it's a mystery where they all are. It's quite hard to find them. But, you know, big loads and, you know, therefore theoretically bigger dollars to play with in terms of incentivizing them. But really for them, it is a case of getting the hurdle of getting the vehicles. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars for some of these vehicles. So, you know, a transit vehicle is $700,000. So, you know, the differential between that and an EV and a diesel vehicle is huge.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, next is a question that's a little bit technology focused, and maybe this is more relevant to the bidirectional charging aspect. So I'm curious, when we have bidirectional charging, maybe we'll start with Francis, because that's what bidirectional energy really solely focus on. So when it's bidirectional, is it kind of you know, given that is the communication of the grid signal has to be communicated through the charger, or is it even possible to go through telematics?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So yeah, interoperability is certainly a challenge just in general for bidirectional charging. All of them are in development, and only some of them are close to being finished. And it's the same with both telematics and ISO 15118 is the charger car communications, and then OCPP is how we talk to our chargers, and all those are in development for bidirectional charging. So we interface with chargers because we can connect to them through API while those standards are being finished. And then as those standards continue to roll out, we will continue to be interoperable with these other standards. So we started with the chargers mostly because that's where we can first connect communication wise, but we haven't ruled out telematics.
Yeah. And Sam, similar question. So you have some bidirectional charging in your scope. So how are you guys approaching that?
Absolutely agree with you, Francis. So we're running the biggest V2G, residential V2G pilot in UK. It was 330 vehicles connected. And actually everything was DC V2G. And as long as I know, hopefully I'm right, there is no pathway right now available doing AC V2G, meaning inverter being on board of the car. So what is needed is to develop that communication pathway, as well as get the automakers on board and convince them that, yes, this is feasible, this is doable, and this is basically the future. Maybe. We're working with one automaker in Europe on AC V2G. It's a very nascent stage, and it's only one of their models, and it's also a luxury type of a make. So it depends, but at this time, it's simply DC V2G.
Yeah, and when it's unidirectional charging, I'm curious, how do you guys, maybe Nathan, Casey, how do you think about when you have a choice or decision to make, whether you're going through telematics or whether you're going through the charger? What are some of the pros and cons that comes into consideration?
Yeah, I'll do a high level pros and cons again, and then I can pass it off to Nate. So the pros of going through telematics are you get the state of charge, which is really big for customer preference. You know, some EVSCs you can input it, but it's not seamless. The telematics, you just know where what the car is going to be at. when they arrive home, you know exactly how flexible it is, you know how long it'll take to get to their desired state of charge. The other pro of telematics is you get to know the location at all times, right? So if you think of a car going and charging at different areas, you can basically watch that route and see this is how the user behavior, how this user charges in our whole service territory. In terms of the pros of the EVSE is one, we like to have users connect both if they have them for robustness, right? So if the telematics or Wi-Fi isn't enabled on one, you can still control the second one. The other benefit of EVSEs is just like the vehicle, you know everywhere that vehicle goes. The EVSE, you know how much load is on that circuit at the house, right? So even if you have neighbors charging or multiple different people, the telematics isn't going to show you the maximum load on that one EVSE outlet, but the EVSE will. So that's kind of how we see it, but we don't pick one. We think both are important, and we try to dual connect where possible.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, we agree that doing both, all the above, is way better. One additional advantage is equity. There could be folks that we were talking about, low and moderate income people with EVs. They might have bought a used EV. It might be pre-telematics. It might have very old, not so robust telematics. So a utility could provide a network mobile charger to pull those people into a program. But yeah, I agree with everything said.
Well, that's great insights. And Dan, how about you in terms of thinking about when you working with the fleet customers? So I have to admit I don't have much experience with the fleet side of things, but I imagine that going through the charger might be more intuitive, but I'm not sure if that's
It's
true.
it's a good question. I mean, generally we do connect to both. So for transit, for example, but we do that in any case because we're very interested in dispatch. So dispatch of the vehicle is a very different thing from the perspective of, the first element is can the vehicle get out and do the job it needs to do? And so we get the telematics to know the state of charge coming into the depot, the state of charge going out of the depot to be able to schedule when that vehicle should or not. And that's how we then can schedule, is there actually capacity within all of that routine to do any flexibility? So we can't do that unless we have telematics. If we don't have, but we're not doing it to do control, we're doing it to understand profiles. And so being able to, over time, do machine learning to understand how much flexibility is there in that duty over time. Is it 50%? Is it 30%? Is it 20%? And if we can see that pattern and go to a fleet operator and say, look, there's 50% flexibility here. Yes, you have to do your tasks. It's very important. We're not going to mess with that. But there's so much buffer that you can afford to do flexibility. That's how we use the telematics.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you so much. We're gonna transition to Q&A from the audience. And Dan, if you want to switch up with Holly, please feel free. Yeah, Dan is actually catching a flight, so thank you so much for joining us. All right. Okay, we're gonna welcome Holly to the stage, and let's start with. So Scott, could you? Is there any questions online?
Yes. The first one is, does bidirectional charging rely on OpenADR as its electricity market communication protocol?
Wants to take that.
So OpenADR does not necessarily need to directly connect to the charger itself. It can connect to the aggregator as well. And it's not the only protocol that can be used. It depends on the program. And then we as the aggregator would manage what that signal is and then make decisions based on customer input on when they need their car, as well as home energy preferences, to make the decision on how to manage the output based on whether it's an OpenADR signal or some other signal that we receive.
All right. And the next one is for Optawatt. Regarding identification of customers, are you looking at single family homes only, or how are you reaching out to multifamily housing?
We're going to be single family predominant. I'd say maybe less than 5% of our overall footprint is multifamily, but as a company, really trying to figure out the homeowner, because we think that's who's going to sit closest to billing. That's who's going to have the most incentive for optimization and saving. So don't have a great response other than we're focused on single family.
We have a question in the audience.
So yeah, my question is particularly regarding bidirectional.
So if you can clarify, like what are the constraints, grid constraints for the bidirectional charging? And the other thing is like how the bidirectional, I'm just wondering like with respect to the customer's point of view, because when we talk about bidirectional charging, people are also concerned about the life cycle of their battery. So how do you address those behaviors, and how do you, ask your customers, how frequent the V2G is going to be that is not going to damage your battery, and how then the incentives could be. I'm just wondering, like, what is the point for them where they think, okay, the incentives are good and we can go for V2G and it's not also damaging the life of the vehicle, etc.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I use a Kaluza study to respond to this. So maybe I'll let Sam answer a part of this as well. So I'll answer the grid constraints piece. So as Sam was saying, it's a DC bidirectional charger, which is essentially the same technology as a solar inverter or battery inverter. So it follows the same grid interconnection process as solar and storage does today. And so it will also need to meet the same grid requirements and address the same grid constraints as well. For the battery warranty, I'll just say a little bit and then I pass the mic to Sam, is what we have seen in battery degradation. There's two types of two ways at a high level that a battery can degrade. It's one by using the battery, the cycling, or when the battery is just stationary, it continues to degrade. And what was found, and I think this was the study that was done in the UK that Kaluza did, is that by having a slow charge from your bidirectional charger, it actually extends the life of your battery. And if you think about the size of your charger, it's about 11, 12 kilowatts. And if you accelerate your car, I have a Chevy Bolt, and so it's a smaller car, and it only takes like 70 kilowatts. So it's still like your charger is just a portion of what your car is used to using on a daily basis. Hopefully I didn't steal your punchline there.
Not at all. This is so I'm gonna be like complimentary to what you were saying. So first of all, I have to tell that is a big concern for the customers. Okay, so like, yeah, battery degradation. And I should know this stat. Yeah, but it went for, so what we found is that we managed to decrease the level of this distrust from roughly 37% to 20 in 2 years. I wish it would be zero, but it wasn't for some reason. But how we did that? First of all, you never discharge more than the automaker actually allows you to. Okay, so there is a warranty, there is a standard, there's like, we follow that. That's first thing. Slow charging and slow discharging is the second one. So we do not drain like a lot of energy at the same time or in one moment. So it's more of a continuous thing. And there's simply limited number of discharging cycles. And actually, for you maybe to know, this is also depends. Again, I'm going back to the rates and to the needs of utility, but on average, maybe once per week was the discharging session per household. We also focus on single family houses. So that is the thing. But again, the key to decrease or to increase the trust of customers was simply communication. So we were trained actually. So for example, they received the utility received a question from the customer about like battery warranty and these concerns, and they were immediately navigated to us, and we provided them with the answers, as well as automakers did. So again, there is a huge space for automakers to be more engaged in this field and tell like the customers that no, it shouldn't be a problem as long as you do it according to our standards.
Hi, I'm Holly, by the way. I did not expect to be on stage, but now that I'm here and we're talking about battery degradation, can't help myself. I would say that this is a really, I mean, definitely a big concern for fleet customers, especially with the larger vehicles. We're working with bus fleets. They have thousands of vehicles. Some of them have, over 100 electric buses, and each one of those batteries could be anywhere from like 400 to 700 kilowatt hours approximately. I think one of the challenges is just a lack of understanding how degradation works. And it's really hard because it's different for each battery manufacturer. So like a Proterra battery, for example, even as a customer, if you're charging to 100%, it's not going to charge. You're not going to be able to charge to 100 true percent of the battery because the engineering team has protected the usable capacity so that the battery is not degrading faster than it should. And the customer doesn't have the ability to do that. But you take like a BYD battery and it doesn't have the same parameters. And to win a deal, they may open up the usable capacity of their battery and say, oh, we have way more range now, and therefore we're going to win this deal because you need a bus that can go 260 miles. And like, if, the competitor is saying 250 or whatever it is. So I think it's a challenge. You have OEMs running the show with battery like limitations, and that's really part of the problem, but that's where we are in the industry because it's early days. We really, really need standards around batteries and usable capacity and degradation and warranties. Customers don't understand kilowatt hour throughput on battery degradation warranties. Like, it's a lot for them to wrap their heads around. So definitely a big issue, but I think there's a lot of problems to be solved there.
Fascinating. I knew this panel deserved more than an hour. Lots of really good insights. If I may just thank you all for your presentation and sharing. I wanted to just ask you one last super quick question. What do you see as useful to have this kind of cohort sharing and just learning, cohort learning and sharing to help your project and your business just overall? If everybody just super quick.
I think the actual amount of grid response we see from this program.
I would say utilities or CCAs leaning into helping develop and push out real-time rates for customers.
Very tactically, we're looking for EV9 drivers that want a bidirectional charger.
We too.
Well, we'd love to work with fleets, but I would say in general, like all of these problems are really hard problems to solve, and no one company can do it all. So we need partnerships and we need to collaborate across the industry, and probably doesn't happen enough.